Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching 4th part of What If Naruto Became Power Hungry. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
He could hear it in the distance, its ferocious hate-fueled howls, the sounds it made as it wreaked havoc, and as he dashed through the trees towards it with his son in his arms, he couldn't help but notice that the boy wasn't crying. If he had been told earlier that day that his newborn son was not crying like a healthy baby despite only being born, he would have rushed him to the hospital, concerned that something was wrong with the baby boy. All he could do now was hope the boy was okay and that whatever was keeping the boy from crying despite the chaos around him didn't interfere with the ceiling. Maybe he was being paranoid, maybe all the stress was getting to him, but he couldn't forget the look the boy had given him when he first opened his eyes. He didn't even know how that was even possible, but his carefully honed instincts recognized the emotion in the boy's eyes. He had seen it before, in the eyes of many enemy ninja he had cut down during the war. The sheer hatred his son's eyes held as he looked at him was. Even after being launched into the air and then teleported around, the baby seemed to be lost in his own thoughts. He didn't know how that was possible, but he didn't have time to think about it as he approached the tailed beast that had previously been sealed in his wife and then set free and rampaged across the area. The next few moments were a blur to him. His wife held the beast down with her chakra chains despite being weakened by childbirth and then the extraction. They said goodbye to their son who still seemed unresponsive, something that worried Kushina, but they didn't have time for it now. He prepared the seal and his son seemed to finally snap out of his thoughts only to move his hand with coordination a baby shouldn't have and try to tamper with the fresh ink in his skin. As the Kyuubi managed to break free from the chains and tired of crushing the vessel meant to imprison it again, it raised its massive claws and brought them down. Both parents immediately jumped in the way of the attack, ready to give their lives to protect their child, and in the moments before the claw pierced through his body, he noticed how the boy's eyes gleamed with what appeared to be excitement. Even with a hole in his chest, he began to make the hand seals that would seal away the beast inside his newborn son and hopefully give him the power needed to defend Konoha and kill the masked man. When something caught his attention, the baby giggled. It was childish and innocent, and Minato had no idea why, but he could tell that seeing him and his wife in this position was what had caused it, that seeing them both die was what caused the baby so much joy, so he finished the seals and began the sealing, the beast turning into raw chakra and making them fall on the floor. He returned his gaze to his beloved village, seeing it in flames before returning his gaze to his son. In that moment, he saw something in the boy's eyes that made him tremble. He saw the almost orgasmic levels of vindictive pleasure that seeing Konoha in flames, seeing them agonizing on the floor, brought the boy. He didn't know how or why, but as he lay there, the pain of being a part of the beast settling in his consciousness and the tug of the soul he was fighting to keep but knew he'd soon lose increasing. He heard a fit of giggles fit for a deranged maniac rather than a newborn baby, and he knew something was wrong. He'd made a blunder. The Naka Shrine. The last thing he remembered was that void swallowing him whole before nothing. He didn't know how long it had been, but he saw a light. He instinctively moved towards it, and as he got closer he felt other presences near him, all moving in the same direction. He reached the light and felt himself ascending, as did all the other presences except one, who seemed to go towards something before disappearing. However, before he could reach wherever he was going, he felt a force pull him. He tried to struggle, but the force's grip on him was too strong. He was pulled down with great force and felt himself being placed inside a container of sorts. He felt his container rearrange itself to fit him perfectly before a coating he had not even realized was there fell off him. He opened his eyes in what seemed like an eternity and the light blinded him for a moment. Once he could see again, he looked around to try and understand what was going on. He noticed that wherever he was dark, most likely underground, the air was cold against his skin, and he was on his knees. What is going on? The train of thought was interrupted as memories of the attack, the Kyuubi, his wife and child, everything came flooding back to him, and he began looking around quickly as he attempted to move. When he couldn't move, he felt a bit of panic and tried to ignore it until he finally met the boy's eyes in front of him, eyes so familiar that despite only seeing them once, he could never forget them. eyes that seemed to shine with the same light that bothered him when he saw them belonging to his baby son. He noticed the blonde hair and the familiar facial structure so similar to that of his Kushina, and when he realized who was standing before him, his brain froze in shock, and he asked the only question that came to mind. "Is that your son, Naruto?" The gleam in his eyes seemed to grow brighter, and Minato couldn't help but be bothered by the cruel grin the blonde wore in the face of his baby boy. "Good day, dear father." Minato couldn't help but flinch at the amount of venom in Naruto's voice, and he was about to say something when he noticed Orochimaru looking amused in the back of the room. "Orochimaru," he spat, but before he could finish, he was backhanded across the face with enough force to dislocate his jaw. The Edo Tensei regeneration quickly healed the injury, and he was grabbed by the hair and forced to look at Naruto once more. "I didn't say you couldn't look away," Naruto hissed, and Minato could see his eyes turn blood red for a moment, just like the Kyuubi's. "Well, aren't you glad to see me, father?" "It's been a long time, 12 years in fact," Naruto said in a sickly sweet tone. "Naruto wa," he began, but was cut off again by a kick to the stomach that broke his ribs. "Shut up. Scum like you has no right to speak." Naruto let go of his hair and began pacing around the room. "You have no idea how long I've waited for this day, to look you in the eyes, to be the one in control. Did you enjoy it? Did holding my life in your hands and deciding to ruin it when I was powerless to stop you give you a fucking kick? Did you feel like a hero when you sacrificed me for the sake of your miserable fucking village, somewhere I had no obligation to? I'm sorry, Naruto, but I couldn't let the village be destroyed." Naruto appeared in front of him a split second later, his hand covered in lightning. He pierced him through the chest and lifted him off the floor, leaving Minato covered in lightning and unable to move. "Does it appear that I care about your village?" Naruto hissed into his ear. After being thrown to the ground, Minato regained control of his body, got to his knees, and Naruto said, "Do you even understand what you did to me? Do you even understand what it's like to be a Jinchuriki? Or are you like the rest, and I'm just a weapon for the village to you? Of course not. You're my son, and I adore you. Apparently not enough to make me a fucking human sacrifice. I wish I didn't have to make you one, but I couldn't let the Kyuubi destroy Konoha. Was it really worth it? Did I mean so little to you that you didn't consider that maybe, just maybe, the village wasn't worth your own newborn son? You mean everything to me, Naruto. I was overjoyed when I found out I was going to be a father. Things weren't supposed to be this way. How come you didn't leave? I couldn't let all those people perish. I vowed to protect them. You have no idea how much I want to make your so-called sacrifice meaningless, kill every single one of the miserable bastards you deemed so valuable that you would rather put a tailed beast in me than leave them to die. But I won't, I don't have to stay on top. They dug their own grave and I will laugh when karma comes to collect their debt. You can't. You were born to be a hero. I'm no hero, and even if I were, they don't deserve to be saved. In fact, whatever punishment karma decides to inflict on them is nothing more than they deserve. Please, Naruto, use the Kyuubi's power to protect Konoha and kill the masked man. Yes, because it's proper fatherly behavior to force a dangerous being on his son that the previous two hosts couldn't control and expect him to kill a man you couldn't. And what do you want me to do? Let all those innocent people perish? And to save them, you decided to bet their survival on someone whose life you were ruining by doing what you wanted anyway? I had no choice but to do this or let Konoha burn. Why didn't you choose someone else? My honor would never allow me to impose this on someone else if I couldn't do it on my own son. You're a ninja. We have no honor. We lie, cheat, and kill to achieve our objectives. I apologize. I wanted us to be a family. You're not my family, Namikaze. You and your B*TCH gave up on that when you turned me into a monster. Do not address your mother as such. Don't you fucking dare tell me what to do, Naruto yelled as he punched Minato in the face with enough force to blow his head off. Naruto calmed down after his head regenerated and said, "You were an orphan, you knew what it was like to grow up without anyone. What did you think it would be like to be a pariah as well? But you had Jiraiya-sensei and Kakashi-sensei. They were both too preoccupied with their own grief to even approach me until I became genin." Naruto shook his head and said, Minato had no response to this, too shocked that the two people he trusted to care for his child had abandoned him like this. "I'm sick of hearing your excuses, Namikaze. I brought you back because you have something I want, and I'm going to take it from you." Naruto slammed both his hands in his head before Minato could react, and the world went dark for the two. Mindscape. Naruto appeared in a place he was very familiar with, the void he spent so much time in that it might as well be his second home. He looked around and noticed a difference. There were two cages in front of each other. He smirked and walked up to them. "You took your time," Kurama said from inside one of the cages. "I think I deserved some retaliation," Naruto said. Another Kurama looked on curiously from the other cage. They had been perplexed when they were released from the Shinigami's stomach and then revived alongside their host. From the impromptu torture session they had witnessed, the brat seemed to want to get them, and while normally they would be against that, his interaction with his other half indicated that they were on friendly terms. Naruto approached Yin Cage Kuramas and said, "I understand you have concerns, but don't worry, I'm here to make you whole again." Naruto looked at Yang Kurama and said, "I made a clone, and we both took position holding both seals. Are you ready to be whole again? You're not the only one who was looking forward to this day. Just remember to concentrate on fusing, and I'll handle him." Yang Kurama nodded, and Naruto inhaled deeply before exhaling and saying, "Let's do it." He and the clone simultaneously pulled both seals, and a wave of chakra exploded from both cages. The two Kuramas turned to red chakra and began to slowly fuse together. Naruto could hear the shocked gasps from the others back at the shrine, but he couldn't worry about them now. When Minato materialized across from him in the void, he grinned. When Minato saw his son across from him, another wave of regret washed over him. He shook his head. He couldn't worry about that now. He looked at Naruto and said, "Please stop, Naruto. You don't have to do this." Naruto said, laughing. "Stop? Why would I do such a thing? Please, Naruto, this isn't right. I'm stronger than you, Namikaze, and might makes right. I don't want to go to war with you, son, but I can't let you do this. What gives you the impression that you can stop me? Please, Naruto, I'm sorry, okay, I failed you, but what you're doing is wrong. We can still talk like father and son." Minato realized he had said something incorrect when Naruto's playful grin vanished and he said, "And what would you know of father and son? A real father would know that when he brings a child into the world, they are his absolute priority, that the good of his child is more important than the greater good. You sacrificed me at the first opportunity. A real father would not even consider that as an option. He would have sacrificed himself but never his own child." Minato was taken aback by the blonde's tone of regret, almost as if what he was saying was painful for him. "Did you have a father, like Naruto?" Naruto shook his head, ignoring the thoughts that raced through his mind, and said, "It doesn't matter. That life is no longer here." Minato wasn't sure what to make of it, but before he could ask any further questions, the blonde said, "Would you like to know something funny? If you had sealed the Kyuubi back inside your wife, she would have survived. All of this could have been avoided if you hadn't decided that giving your village a weapon was more important than your own son's happiness. Your greed cost you your family and the world its savior, so I hope you're happy, because in trying to save your village, in serving the so-called greater good, you deprived this world of the one meant to guide it." You're lying. I could have saved her. How could I possibly lie? Minato said with a shake of his head. I'm not sure what you're saying, son, but I'll stop you and make things right. Naruto exclaimed with a chuckle. Well, then, I'd like to see you give it a shot. Minato dashed towards Naruto, determined to end this quickly so he could help his son. What he didn't expect was Naruto to match his punch with one of his own and send him flying back, and when he recovered, Naruto was already in front of him, fist cocked back and grin on his lips. He deflected the punch and launched his own, only for it to connect and cause Naruto to burst into flames. Shadow copy. Thunderclap lightning style. He dodged the bolt of lightning that flew towards him, but this left him wide open to the kick that followed, flipping and hitting the ground running. Naruto met him in the middle of the arena and they began to trade blows quickly. He's quick, Minato observed. Naruto jumped away and raced through the seals before yelling. Vacuum bomb in Inferno style. The sphere of white-hot fire flew at Minato, who dodged but was still caught in the unexpectedly large blast. When he hit the ground, he saw Naruto go through hand seals again before saying, Hellfire ball in Inferno style. A ball of dark orange flames appeared in between Naruto's hands and he moved to shoot it, but he seemed to lose control and the ball barely flew before it exploded. Seeing this happen, Minato instantly teleported to the mark he had placed on his son during their taijutsu exchange, intent on protecting the boy from the failed jutsu. The last thing he heard was Naruto saying, "Got you," before piercing him through the back. The blast incinerated him down to the bone, but the Edo Tensei regeneration worked to repair the damage as Naruto ripped his arm from Minato's chest by cutting through his left side. Minato collapsed to the ground and said as he recovered from his injuries, "You duped me. You took advantage of the fact that I care about you to catch me in that attack. I'm not pulling any punches, Namikaze. You had your fun when I was powerless, but now I have the ability to strike back, and I'll show you the same level of compassion you showed to that baby you turned into a weapon. Please, Naruto. I wish things could be different, but it was the only way. And I wish I had a real father, not a murderer so indoctrinated by the system that he'd rather make his own son a prisoner than let it burn. I guess it's true what they say, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. Do you regard me as a murderer? You're so blind that you can't see that? You claim that the lives of the villagers were more important than mine. Why are their lives any more important than mine, or any of those you killed during the war? That was different because they were my adversaries. And what did I do as a baby to become your foe, to be sacrificed for Konoha? No, you're not. You're my son. So, why wasn't my life as important as theirs? Not at all, I was Hokage, I couldn't let them die. You would not have used me if you were a father. Minato expressed regret to his son and said, I'm sorry I couldn't have both, but the choice is clear between my son and the village, and I couldn't live with myself if I used someone else. Why? Why did you hate me so much that you would turn me into a monster? Was I not good enough? Was there something wrong with me? Why didn't you love me? Naruto yelled, his voice breaking as he spoke. Of course I did, son, I say. He didn't get a chance to finish because Naruto dashed towards him much faster than before, punching Minato with enough force to send him flying away, and Minato didn't get a chance to recover because Naruto flew after him and kicked him to the ground. I had a father. He screamed as he slammed into Minato with all his might. Another hit. A mother. A sister. Says another. I gave it up so I could have peace. He clutched Minato's neck. I gave everything up so I could sleep forever. He punched him in the face. And you took it away from me. I sacrificed everything for peace, and you took it away from me. If Minato hadn't been an Edo Tensei zombie, he would have died many times over by the end of the brutal beating. Both his legs were broken in numerous places, one of his arms was ripped off and the other was barely hanging by a thread. There were several holes in his chest, and his head had caved in and regenerated several times. And despite all of that, you still weren't good enough. You took what I gave everything up for and threw me away like trash. Well, you know what? Fuck you. I don't need you. I am stronger and I will continue to grow stronger until I'm the best, until I'm in control, until everyone and everything is powerless before me, and then nobody will ever be able to say Naruto Uzumaki is not good enough. Naruto set the battered and broken man down on the floor and returned to the now reformed Kyuubi, his steps firm and full of determination, not a shred of doubt in his eyes or heart. He heard a final, "I'm sorry," as he approached the beast. He didn't give up. The Naka Shrine. When Naruto opened his eyes again, he never felt more complete. Despite Kurama being the one who regained its other half, he also felt as if he now had a missing piece of himself, and it felt incredible. He saw Minato collapse on the floor. He knew Minato wasn't dead, but the mental damage he had inflicted was severe, and against his better judgment, he decided to keep the blonde in the world of the living for a little longer, if only to suffer a little more. I didn't realize how much I missed being whole, Kurama said. I'm glad you're content. I heard what you said to him. Are you all right? To be honest, Kurama, I've never felt better. I'm glad you were able to get that out of your system, and hey, I'm sure your real family would be proud of you. No. No, they wouldn't, but that doesn't matter because I'm no longer that person, and I'm not going to carry his baggage with me. I'm myself, and I wouldn't want to be anyone else. Naruto turned to face the others, noting Sasuke's concern and Orochimaru's curiosity. Are you all right? Sasuke inquired. I'm amazing. He replied with a smile, and was about to turn to face Karen when she hugged him tightly, leaving him perplexed until she whispered softly in his ear. You're not a monster, please don't say that again. Thank you, he said softly, brushing her hair. That was certainly interesting, Naruto-kun, Orochimaru said. We should go, they can't have missed the Kyuubi's chakra. They left the shrine, and Naruto gave the man collapsed on the floor one last look before walking away. They made their way through Konoha's back streets and shadowy corners, using Orochimaru and Naruto's knowledge of the village to sneak past patrols and ninja heading towards the Uchiha compound. They had reached the outskirts of the village when Naruto noticed a signature approaching them at high speed. He looked at it and said, "Incoming." They were all on high alert when Jiraiya emerged from the woods. He scanned the group and locked his gaze on Orochimaru. Orochimaru, he yelled. Jiraiya, Orochimaru said, amused. He was about to say something when he noticed something out of the corner of his eye that made him pause. He quickly looked past the rest of the group until he saw Naruto, who was watching him with a cocky grin. And Naruto. What a... If it isn't Jiraiya, you know, I'm glad to see you for the first time in my life. Jiraiya frowned as his thoughts raced at a breakneck pace. So you're going to join Orochimaru? We're actually partners. He assists me and I fix what your third Hokage has already done. Orochimaru lifted his perfectly healthy hands as if to demonstrate this. Jiraiya's gaze locked on the blondes, and he said, Why? What's the deal? Why am I departing? Why did I band together with Orochimaru? Naruto smiled. How come I assisted him in killing Sarutobi? Jiraiya snarled, You didn't. However, I did. Jiraiya's glare became more intense, but before he could react, two more people emerged from the trees and stood beside Jiraiya. The blonde Hokage noticed him but focused her gaze solely on Orochimaru. Kakashi, on the other hand, appeared to be in physical pain at seeing his two students standing alongside a traitor. Kakashi. I knew exactly who I wanted to see. He found it painful that he had never seen Naruto so at ease with himself, but he appeared to be at peace now, as he prepared to leave everything he had ever known behind. Kakashi shook his head. This was not the time for such thoughts, and asked Sasuke. Why? You have so much potential. You could easily be a Jonin, and you were getting closer to Sakura. This village has been holding me back. You're too preoccupied with your grief to properly train me. I need power to kill Itachi, and if Orochimaru will give me that, I don't care about anything else. So you're going to leave? Giving up everything you've ever known? Betraying everything you swore to protect? All I'm interested in is killing Itachi, not Konoha or you, just Itachi. Naruto said as Kakashi frowned beneath his mask. You know who I just talked to, Kakashi? Your cherished sensei. At this, Kakashi flinched and said. You're telling the truth. Minato sensei is no longer alive. You act as if the Edo Tensei does not exist. How could you, Naruto? That jutsu is heinous. It's just a tool, and do you really think I'd let something as meaningless as morals get in my way? Especially in the case of Namikaze? Naruto shook his head and said. Kakashi seemed to go from angry to saddened and back again. It hasn't been a bad time, but I'm afraid this is the end. And you think we'll just let you go? Tsunade explained. Do you believe you can stop me? You're surrounded, Naruto. The Anbu have been encircling this area since I arrived, and there's no way for you to escape even with all of you. Clear a path. I'll cover your escape, Naruto instructed his companions. What? We are not abandoning you, Sasuke nodded behind Karen as she spoke. Naruto smiled and grabbed her arms, looking her in the eyes and asking. Do you believe me? Of course, she said confidently. He closed the gap and kissed her for the first time. It was quick, but Karen could tell it was important to him and to her. He separated, never looking away from her eyes, and said. Trust me when I say I'll be right there with you. He looked at Sasuke. The message to keep her safe was clear. Sasuke nodded, and Naruto returned his gaze to the three and said. I'm not backing down. Either you move or I go through you. Stop, Naruto, Kakashi said. There's no way you're going to beat us all. You're good but not that good. Naruto said with a chuckle. That is where you are incorrect. Kakashi, I'm not going to hold back any longer, and if you won't let me leave in peace, we'll do it the hard way. Naruto grinned, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He could feel the power he had painstakingly accumulated over the years. The way his muscles tensed and his senses sharpened, it was intoxicating. If he had to describe it, it would be like he was made of living lightning, the way the energy in his body begged to be released. There will be no more withholding. He flew at Kakashi at such high speeds that the silver-haired Jonin's eyes widened in surprise for a brief moment before Naruto's blow connected with his hasty guard and launched him through several trees before one of them managed to stop his momentum. He returned Tsunade's punch with one of his own, and his surprise at the fact that she had indeed used her full strength was overshadowed by her own surprise at Naruto matching her blow. The collision created a shockwave, uprooting nearby trees and kicking up a cloud of dust. Jiraiya kicked Naruto from within the dust. Naruto sidestepped and grabbed the man's leg. Before Jiraiya could break free, he was launched through the air, and Naruto flew right behind him, kicking him to the ground and following with an axe kick. Jiraiya managed to jump away, and the kick made contact with the ground, widening the already large crater even more. Once the dust settled, Naruto stood on one side of it, grin on his face, while the others stood on the other, on guard. Is this it? I thought you were a legendary ninja. All three were taken aback by Naruto's strength. Jiraiya knew Naruto held back his strength in order to fight Itachi, but this was excessive. Naruto, how did you become so powerful? You could not have gained this level of strength in the time you've been a genin, said Kakashi. You are correct. I have been training since I met the Kyuubi when I was 6 years old. At that hour. But that means Naruto the Kyuubi is attempting to manipulate you. Jiraiya stated. Oh no, this is entirely my fault. The Kyuubi has nothing to do with it. Please, Naruto. We failed you, I failed you, but we're here now to make amends. You need help, you're not well. Not feeling well? I suppose I wasn't, but what did you expect after everything I went through, everything you put me through for this village? I'm sorry, but you should give me a chance to make amends. I wanted to take you as my apprentice, teach you, and help you reach your full potential. You could be so much more. I will fulfill my potential, I will be so much more than you can imagine, but I don't need you for that, Jiraiya. Jiraiya sadly shook his head and said, I won't let you leave Naruto. I'll stop you with force if necessary, and then you'll listen. He bit his hand and made some hand seals before slamming it into the ground, the male toad said, and 2 toads appeared in his shoulders. What's going on, Jiraiya-chan? I need your help beating some sense into that student I told you about, Ma and Pa. Naruto was noticed by both toads, and the female one said. So that's the prophecy's child. Naruto said with a smile to the 2. I was hoping Jiraiya would summon Fukasaku and Shima. Fukasaku stated that both toads were surprised that the boy knew their names. Did you tell Jiraiya-chan about us? No, I didn't, Jiraiya said as he gathered natural energy. After a few moments, Jiraiya entered Sage mode and was about to attack the blonde when he felt something that surprised him. He looked at Naruto and watched as the blonde's familiar eyes of perfect Toad Sage mode appeared. How? The toads all said the same thing. Surprised? I expected you to be. How did you find out? It can only be taught by the elder toads. Oh, I have a lot more tricks where that came from. Both sages charged at each other, and their fists collided, causing a shockwave that blew away the surrounding trees. They began to trade blows furiously, a dodged punch led to a kick, which led to a leg sweep, and so on. Meanwhile, 2 clones Naruto had created fought Tsunade and Kakashi, putting both on the defensive with the sheer power of his blows. Tsunade had to rely on her 100 healings to stay in the fight, while Kakashi could only rely on the Sharingan to keep him out of harm's way while he tried to find an opening to attack the blonde. Jiraiya screamed as she moved quickly through hand seals. Water Style. Wild Water Wave by Sage Art. He spit a massive tsunami that washed away all the trees in its path, but Naruto saw it coming and countered with his own jutsu, ignoring the element and instead going for raw power. Inferno Style. Majestic Destroyer Flame, by Sage Art. Naruto released a massive jet of white-hot flames, incinerating everything in its path. It collided with Jiraiya's jutsu, and for a brief moment it appeared that Jiraiya's elemental advantage would win the jutsu clash before Naruto's evaporated and flew at Jiraiya, who had to harden his hair to block the flames. What's the matter, Jiraiya? Is this all the great Toad Sage of Mount Myoboku has to offer? It's no surprise that your students die because their teacher is so pitiful. Jiraiya growled and dashed towards Naruto at full speed, punching the blonde and then kicking him upwards, but before Jiraiya could finish the attack, Naruto flashed through hand seals and said, Inferno Style. Vacuum Bomb, by Sage Art. Jiraiya was caught in the blast as it consumed everything around it in white-hot flames. When it died down, his clothes were burned, and it appeared that he had used his hair to protect the toads, causing additional damage. Naruto landed in the newly formed burnt-out crater and looked at Jiraiya, who was clearly in pain, shaking his head and saying, "What happened to you that you were chosen? I'm curious, if it had been a truly competent ninja, say. I don't know Orochimaru, but if he had been destined to train the child of prophecy, perhaps all of this could have been avoided, and perhaps all of your students would have survived if their teacher had been anything more than a perverted cowardly weakling. Stay quiet. Doesn't the truth hurt? It's no surprise, you only pass down to your students what your own teacher passed down to you, and even in death, Sarutobi remains what he always was, a failure." Jiraiya charged at Naruto in rage, but due to his injuries, he was too slow. The blonde easily blocked his blows and punched him away, and the toads eventually took too much damage and vanished in a puff of smoke. "You're done, Jiraiya. Get down. I'm not going away." Naruto shook his head and raised his hand to the sky. The clouds darkened and rumbled, the wind picked up and the sky lit up, distant thunderclaps could be heard, and all was still before Naruto said anything. "It is what it is," he yelled as he lowered his hand. "Sage style. Storm. Kirin."
A massive dragon made of lightning roared itself into existence from the clouds, and in the blink of an eye it hit the ground, creating an explosion large enough to permanently scar the local landscape, vaporizing everything within its blast radius, leaving no traces of anything in the scorched crater and a faint cackling sound in the air.
Naruto said with a smile. "You." Kakashi deflected another blow from his errant student, thankful that the clones weren't in the strange mode that Naruto and Jiraiya seemed to be in, or he was sure he wouldn't be able to keep up. As it stood, his superior battlefield experience and Sharingan were the only things keeping him in this fight. He knew Naruto had talent, he thought the blonde would easily be Kage level in a few years, and with the way he had become the team's unofficial second-in-command after himself, he thought the blonde would make a good Hokage or Jonin commander at least, if only he dealt with the clear psychological issues he had. He could see those characteristics now as the blonde had taken control of the situation and prioritized his group's safety, taking on the superior foe by himself. He would have been proud if the blonde wasn't defecting his village alongside another of his students and the girl who lived with him. Instead, he was scrambling to keep up with a level of strength he didn't think the blonde would have in at least another decade, much less right now. "What's wrong, Hitaki? Not going to fight back?" "I don't want to hurt you, Naruto." "A little late for that, don't you think?" Naruto said with a grin. He jumped away to get some space and the blonde didn't follow, instead he just kept grinning at him. Kakashi knew he couldn't afford to pause here. He had already let too many people down, and he would not let Naruto down now. His hand burst with blue electricity. The sound of birds chirping brought back unpleasant memories, but he couldn't get lost in them now. "That's more like it," Naruto said, his hand bursting with purple lightning. "I'm bringing you back, Naruto. You're my student and I'm not losing you." They both charged at each other with a scream. Reikari lightning style. Storm style. Chidori. For a moment all seemed to still as they neared each other before both jutsu collided in a deafening clash. Kakashi and Naruto kept their eyes locked to each other's in a battle of will just as much as one of power. After a moment, the two were consumed by an explosion, the noise stopped, and the cloud of smoke began to dissipate, only for Kakashi to jump out of it, his clothes damaged but he wasn't slowing down, followed by Naruto, who also took some damage but his injuries were already closing by themselves. They both still had their jutsu in their hands and clashed them like swords. They clashed again, and Naruto began to overpower Kakashi, forcing him back more and more, he said. "What you don't seem to understand, Kakashi, is that I don't want to get close to you." They moved away from each other for a moment before clashing again and again, their movements gaining momentum as they kept going. "I mean, who would? You don't exactly have the best track record in that regard." As Kakashi flew away, he sped through hand seals and shouted. Howling Gale Wind style. A sharp gust of wind flew at Naruto, who smirked and countered with his own jutsu. Thunder Stream Storm Style. Naruto emitted a continuous beam of purple lightning from his hands, the jutsu clashed, and both ninja attempted to outmatch the other. Your mother? Dead before you could even remember her. Naruto's attack began to push Kakashi back, and the silver-haired Jonin pumped more chakra into it while gritting his teeth. You father? Killed himself because he was shunned for following Konoha's creed. Naruto grinned. You shunned him as well, didn't you? The strain of maintaining the jutsu began to wear on Kakashi, and he was gradually pushed back. You surrogate father? Naruto asked, his voice bitter. Died for a village that, like you, abandoned his legacy and ignored his last wish. Kakashi lost the clash and was sent flying back. He hit a tree and spat a mouthful of blood. He groaned in pain as he got up. His instincts screamed and he jumped away from his position just in time to avoid the stab from Naruto's Chidori. That gave him enough time to form another Raikiri and match the blonde again. And then there were your teammates, Naruto smirked. You were unworthy, and Obito had to die for you. Kakashi got down on one knee, using all of his chakra to keep the blonde at bay. He had blood on his tongue and tears in the corners of his eyes. You broke your promise and murdered Rin. Kakashi used the last of his strength in one last push, hoping against hope that he could overpower the blonde, but just as his jutsu faded due to a lack of chakra, so did Naruto's. You failed them, Hatake. You failed them all, and you want to know what's worse? Naruto crouched next to Kakashi and whispered. Obito isn't even really dead. Despite the fact that he was fighting to stay conscious, Kakashi looked at the blonde and saw no signs of deception in him. No matter how much he wanted to deny it, he saw that the blonde was telling the truth. Naruto turned his gaze to the distant explosion and sensed something, or rather someone, approaching. He smirked and said one last thing to Kakashi before dispelling and passing out. Come meet us in Kiri. Tsunade is present. The shockwaves from their exchanged blows had created a clearing in which they were fighting, with shattered trees all around them as their fists clashed repeatedly. Naruto sidestepped one of Tsunade's punches and moved into a leg sweep, but Tsunade jumped over it and kicked the blonde back. What are you doing, Naruto? You should know better than anyone, Tsunade, you left too. Naruto speed through hand seals and said. Thunderclap lightning style. The thunderbolt swooped down on Tsunade, who punched the ground, causing a stone to rise and block the path. She then kicked the stone at Naruto, who shattered it with one punch and matched her with the next. So everything you told me was a lie? Naruto jumped back but didn't immediately attack again, instead looking the woman in the eyes and answering. No, I meant it when I said I respected your decision. I just don't want to serve a village that has done nothing but cause me pain for its own sake. She came to a halt as well, having considered his response and saying. I understand, still there has to be a better option than this, why don't you stay? Make the village better? Help me make it a village worth serving? Naruto shook his head and said. The village system itself is the problem. Your grandfather wanted peace with it, but the wars continued, and you fought in 2 of them. It can't be fixed. The only way to have peace is to tear it down and build something better over its ruins. Is that your plan? To destroy all the villages? Naruto exclaimed with a chuckle. I'm not sure why everyone thinks I have some grand plan for the entire world. I'm just selfish.
I don't want to save or destroy the world.
I just want to achieve my goals. Even if it means stepping on others to get there? The powerful do what they please and the weak can only beg for mercy, such is the world we live in. Tsunade stood there in silence for a moment before shaking her head sadly and saying. Is this your final position? Naruto nodded and stated. You're a threat to the village, Naruto, and I can't just let you go as Hokage. I'm not a threat to your village, Tsunade. I just want to go," pleaded Naruto. For a brief moment, he could sense Tsunade seriously considering letting him go, and the blonde Senju understood and sympathized with Naruto's feelings on the subject before shaking her head and saying, "I'm sorry, Naruto, but I can't let you go. You're the Jinchuriki, and Konoha requires you." Tsunade heard Naruto say, "I know," before he vanished. Her mind didn't have time to process it, and it was her instincts that gave her the answer a heartbeat before she felt an agonizing spike of pain and a lightning-coated fist pierce through her stomach and out through her front. Genjutsu. Her blow passed through the blonde standing behind her, but her 100 healings quickly healed her injuries as she looked around and tried to break through the surprisingly powerful Genjutsu. Could it be Senjutsu boosted Genjutsu? Her instincts screamed a split second later, and she jumped just in time to avoid the earth spikes that erupted from her previous position. "I respect you enough not to use your brother or your lover against you, Tsunade," a voice from everywhere said. "However, I'm afraid I can't lose here." A sudden blade of wind slashed her back, and she grunted in pain as she tried to break free from the illusion and fight this invisible opponent. A stone dragon burst from the ground beneath her feet, and in kicking it away, she left herself open to the bolt of lightning that struck her in the sides. She rolled with the blow and rose to her feet, focusing all of her attention inside and breaking the Genjutsu with a powerful chakra flare, but it didn't give her enough time to escape because the ground gave way beneath her feet and trapped both of her legs. She moved to punch it when two water whips appeared from the trees and separated her arms. Before she could break free, she felt an extremely sharp blade in her neck and heard Naruto whisper in her ear, "Even you can't regenerate a severed head." "You won," she said, taking care not to get too close to the wind-assisted blade. "What are you waiting for? Are you not going to murder me? Why would I kill you? I'm not your adversary, Tsunade. All I want is freedom. Your freedom comes at the cost of a lot of innocent lives." "Maybe so, but like I said, I'm selfish, they don't matter to me." Before Tsunade could retort, Naruto knocked her out with the kunai's pommel, releasing her from her restraints and laying her on the ground. He heard an explosion in the distance and smiled at who he felt arrive on the battlefield before he dispelled himself. With the Naruto original series. When the dust cloud from his previous attack dissipated, it wasn't Jiraiya's battered and broken body that stood in the center of the crater, which didn't surprise Naruto because he could feel it before he could see it. "You," he said, not surprised that the man had recovered and arrived in time to save Jiraiya. "Son," Minato said, and Naruto smiled at the steel in his voice, knowing that their fight on the mindscape wasn't the best the man could do, and it appeared that Minato was finally ready to fight seriously. "I think I told you that wasn't the case." Naruto sped through hand seals for the Edo Tensei, intent on releasing the jutsu now that he had what he wanted, and Minato was proving more of a hindrance than anything. He had no plans of fighting the man and as such was irritated and surprised when Minato didn't falter despite releasing the jutsu. How did he free himself? Could he know the hand seals for it? Naruto pondered before Minato spoke. "I'm not going to let you do this, Naruto. I also believe we had this conversation before." Minato looked up to Naruto, his blue eyes cold as they had been during the war, and they locked eyes for a moment, blue Edo Tensei reanimation eyes meeting yellow perfect sage eyes in a battle of wills before both fighters dashed at each other at insane speeds. Minato outpaced Naruto and uppercut the other blonde. He moved to another punch, but Naruto simply tanked it and landed his own hit. Minato flew back at the sheer force of the attack and crashed into the ground. He quickly recovered and looked up to see Naruto speeding through hand seals. Sage Art. Raging Hurricane Wind Style. A massive tornado appeared in front of the blonde and moved towards Minato, uprooting hundreds of trees nearby and carving a trench in the forest floor. Naruto wasn't done, however, as he had already sped through another series of hand seals and shouted before the tornado got far. Inferno Style. Hellfire Ball, by Sage Art. An orange ball of condensed flames flew towards the tornado quickly, and as they collided, Minato was stunned by the sheer destructive potential of the jutsu he had previously been duped by. The ball exploded in a massive inferno that seemed to nearly overpower the tornado before merging into an even larger flaming hurricane that burned to ash everything in its path. He wasn't a Hokage for nothing, as he used the Edo Tensei's unlimited chakra to create dozens of clones that moved through hand seals and shouted. Crushing Tides. Water Style. The combined attack of that many clones managed to withstand Naruto's monstrosity, causing a massive wave of steam to cover the area, which Naruto took advantage of as he dashed towards Minato again with a kick. Minato, on the other hand, saw this coming and dodged the blow, taking the opportunity to mark Naruto with his Hiraishin, dashed towards the blonde with a Rasengan in hand. Naruto created a Chidori and moved to Jutsu Clash with Minato. Minato teleported behind the blonde and slammed his Rasengan into his back, forcing the air from his lungs and propelling him away. Give up, Naruto, you're not going to beat me. Naruto stood up, blood dripping from his mouth and his back screaming in pain from the blow, but he had never felt more alive. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he remembered something and gave Minato a cruel smirk. Let's see about that, he said, flashing through hand seals once more and taking a deep breath. Inferno Style. Majestic Destroyer Flame, by Sage Art. Minato shook his head as he teleported behind the blonde again to avoid the white flames, but Naruto was ready and took advantage of the blocked visibility to punch Minato with enough force to send him flying hundreds of meters before he recovered. They began an exchange that most ninja would find difficult to follow, let alone participate in. Minato began to place tags all over the place, using his greater mobility, unlimited chakra, and ability to ignore most wounds to put pressure on Naruto, who resorted to large area high damage ninjutsu at range and his own super strength when up close. Minato had to give it to Naruto. He was able to withstand most attacks that would have killed lesser men, and the jutsu he used would have killed a normal person to attempt due to the sheer chakra cost, but the blonde seemed to do them effortlessly. After a while, the ninjutsu barrage ceased, and Naruto spoke as Minato prepared to move again. Do you know where this is? Minato looked around and couldn't help but feel a sense of familiarity with the location of their battle. The stretch of forest they were in wasn't destroyed like their initial battlefield, and the only distinguishing feature he could think of was that they were on a hill and that he could see Konoha behind him. A memory burned its way to the forefront of his mind. A familiar-looking forest, the pain in his mind, the blood pooling beneath him, the village in flames behind him. The baby giggled with his wide blue eyes shining in delight. You remember, don't you? Naruto asked, a worried grin on his face. This is what happened 12 years ago when you made your decision. As Naruto continued, Minato had a bad feeling in his stomach. However, it wasn't just you and me. There was someone else. Minato sighed, but Naruto had already finished. Shall we bring them to this reunion? A clone of Naruto appeared right away, the only difference being that its eyes weren't those of Sage Mode or even Naruto's normal blue eyes, but blood red, and they stared at Minato with a mocking cruelty that reminded him far too much of that day. A massive amount of tailed beast chakra expanded from the clone, but Naruto intercepted him and stopped him from interfering. Muscle and bone covered the clone, giving it a massive, clearly not human shape. The thing, Minato knew it wasn't a clone anymore, but he was too shocked to admit what it was, grew more and more as the amount of chakra covered in hatred and malice and so much bloodthirst increased. In the end, Minato stood in the same clearing he had 12 years before, his son and the Kyuubi his only company, but the circumstances were vastly different. Near the Fire Country's border, Karen dashed through the woods, terrified. Her group had easily broken through the Anbu encirclement. Sasuke had been freely using the curse mark, and Orochimaru was in a league of his own, though she knew that if pressed, he would take Sasuke and abandon her and the rest of his underlings. She kept ruining, forcing herself not to look back, The memory of lips in hers and blue eyes gazing into her ruby ones full of care was what kept her from going back. She knew Naruto was strong, but fighting two Sannin and an elite Jonin was nothing to scoff at, and as she made her escape, she felt the signature of the fourth Hokage appearing in the edge of her range before she went too far to sense anything back there. She felt a wave of frustration at the thought of needing to be protected. If she was stronger, she wouldn't need it. If she was stronger, she could prevent Naruto from getting hurt for her sake. She didn't even want to think what would happen if he died protecting her. If she was stronger, she could be fighting right alongside him. If she was stronger. She almost fell face first on the ground when a massive wave of heavy, thick chakra slammed into her. She noticed that everyone else felt it as well because they all stopped to look back. She did as well and froze at what she saw. A massive dark orange fox with 9 majestic tails stood in the distance, so huge that they could see it clearly even from this distance, so powerful that they could feel the sheer destructive power it emanated. The way it was more of a force of nature than a living being was clear in how oppressive its chakra felt even to an untrained sensor, let alone herself. For a brief moment, fear gripped her before the memory of that warm, comforting golden glow came to mind, calming her down and giving her confidence that Naruto would be fine and would come to them, as he promised and never broke a genuine promise. Within Konoha, Sakura had been practicing her medical ninjutsu in the hospital when a massive wave of chakra washed over the village, alerting all ninja and even some particularly chakra-sensitive civilians that something major had occurred. When she saw Jiraiya of the Sannin flying over her head towards the walls of the village, she knew that something really big had happened, and the fact that the Hokage and Kakashi-sensei flew right behind him didn't help either. She knew that in situations like this, most Chunin and Jonin would be at the walls in case of an enemy attack, but as a medic, she was expected to stay behind, and since she had been at the hospital, she decided that helping there would be the best thing she could do. She wondered if either of her teammates were on the walls as the last patient moved into the shelter beneath the hospital. They, too, had been promoted, though neither seemed to care much. Sasuke had been promoted to Chunin and designated for the Jonin exam almost as soon as the new Hokage took office. Due to his issues, there had been some reluctance to promote Naruto, but the entire Team 7 had vouched for the blonde's abilities as a team leader and that he could keep a cool head during missions most of the time, so he was promoted as well, though Kakashi-sensei would have to keep an eye on him during his first few missions, the first of which had yet to occur. She was jolted out of her thoughts when a wave of tailed beast chakra hit her. She watched in horror as the beast rose to its full height near the village gates, but unlike the others, she wasn't terrified just because of it. Instead, fragments of memories came to her in rapid succession. Tailed beasts. Jinchuriki. Exceptionally powerful. Extraction kills the host. She could hear the terrified screams of the odd civilian who wasn't yet in a shelter in the back of her mind, but she couldn't pay attention as the puzzle fell into place in her mind. Naruto. Naruto. Naruto was. She couldn't finish her train of thought, so her training kicked in and she began moving robotically, attempting to assist while dealing with the mind-numbing fear and the reality of what appeared to have occurred. She considered the possibility of betrayal in the back of her mind but couldn't focus on it. Within the clearing, the roar Kurama let out after it completed its full manifestation was deafening, creating a shockwave that shook the trees just by the sound of it. "No," Minato said quietly. "Yes." Naruto exclaimed joyfully. Minato couldn't take his gaze away from the beast, remembering the cries of pain, the village in flames, and the baby who didn't cry. His instincts kicked in response to Naruto moving, and he understood immediately when the blonde ripped off his black and orange jacket, which despite being in tatters still held. He took off the Hiraishin seal. He exclaimed. "Here we stand again," Naruto exclaimed, motioning to the clearing. "You, me, Konoha, and the Kyuubi. What are you, Naruto?" He was cut off by Kurama launching the attack that had inspired his Rasengan. They raised their 9 massive tails above their heads, and the purple ball of dense chakra began to form in their jaw. We've come full circle, and you're faced with another choice, Naruto explained. Before Naruto elaborated, the implication burned its way into Minato's mind. It's either me or the village. He motioned towards Konoha. Repeat your error, choose Konoha, and you'll be unable to follow me. Minato was taken aback. He had never imagined Naruto would go so far. Make a different decision, choose me, and the Kyuubi will complete what they began 12 years ago. Naruto said with a cruel grin. What is the distinction? It took 12 years to learn the layout, priority targets, and location of each emergency shelter. He paled as the Kyuubi aimed the clearly ready attack at one of the civilian-filled shelters, with no ninja to stop it. There will be no hero to save them this time. There will be no survivors if you leave, and there will be no other chance if you stay. As he spoke, Naruto's eyes twinkled. Wasn't that what you said? There is no magical best solution where everyone gets a happy ending, only a balance and a choice to be made. Minato looked at his son, his mind at odds with itself and unable to make a decision. What are you going to be, hero? Naruto yelled. Minato considered the son he had failed and the village he had died to protect, but in the end, just as it had done 12 years before, duty won and he rushed back to the village as quickly as he could, determined to stop the Kyuubi if they attacked. As Kurama fired the tailed beast bomb, Naruto shook his head and dashed through the trees towards his allies. He wasn't expecting anything different. After 3 days, the second coming of the Kyuubi was stopped not because someone stopped the beast, though many people saw the fourth Hokage return from the dead to protect them, but because the beast just vanished suddenly, only a select few people knowing that the reason was that Naruto had gotten away and the distraction was no longer needed. Still, it had severely set Konoha back to the point where the manpower they had been building since the previous attack and that had not been lost in the Suna invasion had been all but annihilated. Civilians suffered the most casualties as Naruto hadn't been bluffing when he said he knew who to target for maximum damage, and the funeral lasted the entire day and was held in the same spot where they had buried a cage not long before. After that came reconstruction, and while spirits were already low, they plummeted when, enraged by the fact that his last wish had been ignored, Minato revealed that Naruto was his son and that he was disgusted by the village's behavior. Nobody had seen the undead cage since, and the population had been torn between blaming Naruto and regretting their actions. Time passed slowly as they tried to get back on their feet, all the while Jiraiya searched for any rumors about Naruto's whereabouts. Minato nearly killed Jiraiya and Kakashi for abandoning their duties to Naruto. He demanded to know everything, and the more he learned about the life his son led, the angrier he became at the two and at Konoha in general. When he was alone, he sometimes caught himself pondering if he made the right choice.
That led him to where he was today.
He knew that if he was to bring his son home and make things right, he wouldn't be able to do it alone. He needed the one person he was certain could persuade the blonde to see reason. Are you certain about this, Minato? Jiraiya inquired, and Minato immediately turned to face the man, seeing Jiraiya flinch and hiss. I am not abandoning my son. If it takes this to bring him home, I will do it. Minato, he let the Kyuubi loose on Konoha. If he returned, he'd be executed or imprisoned at the very least. And who is to blame? Who boasted about being his godfather but then abandoned him? Minato shook his head and ignored his former sensei, speeding through the jutsu and waiting for its effect. When he saw the woman he loved with beautiful red hair and violet blue eyes, he locked eyes with her and whispered. Kushina. Naruto sat at a desk, going over the ceiling array he had prepared to make sure there were no mistakes. He had done this several times before, but after the situation with Minato 3 days ago, he had been double-checking everything to make sure he hadn't made any mistakes that could jeopardize his plan. He had not expected Minato to be able to break free from his control. He had let him stay in the living world on a whim, not expecting Minato to be able to do anything against him. Naruto realized now that in his excitement at finally being free from Konoha and no longer having to hold back, he was arrogant, relying too heavily on what he knew of canon and not considering that people might have things that even he didn't know about. Despite this, he was glad. If such a wake-up call had to happen, he was glad it happened when it did. Minato was annoying to fight, but it wasn't like Naruto couldn't keep up with the Hiraishin. If he used Kurama chakra mode, he was just as fast as the blonde Hokage. Ultimately, it could have been a lot worse. He could have made such a critical mistake in a crucial part of his plan, and while he hadn't wanted to antagonize Konoha so much, he wasn't scared of them, but he'd rather not go around making enemies for no reason. He had to admit that he enjoyed greatly what he did, forcing Minato back into the same situation as he had been during the first Kyuubi attack 12 years ago felt so. After escaping, he and his allies went to one of Orochimaru's bases, where the Sannin allowed Naruto and Karen to use it as their own base while Naruto checked everything and Karen did some training. Naruto had taught her the shadow clone training method, and while she couldn't use the raw number of clones that Naruto could do to her not being a Jinchuriki, it still helped her quite a bit. She concentrated her training on Fuinjutsu and medical ninjutsu at Naruto's request, and he promised to teach her a few techniques when he had time. Naruto was jolted out of his reverie when the snake Sannin entered the room, his eyes wide with wonder. "What are you up to, Naruto-kun? I've never seen anything like this seal before," Naruto said with a smirk. "This is my response to cowards who use space-time ninjutsu. It prevents any attempts to teleport in or out of the barrier. I call it a space-time lock." "I see, that is a very impressive piece of Fuinjutsu. Do you mind if I examine it?" Naruto said with a shrug. "Go ahead, but don't tamper with it. I'd rather not teleport our planet into the sun by accident." "You can do that?" Orochimaru inquired, his face a mix of curiosity and fear. "Perhaps one day," Naruto smirked. He watched as Orochimaru studied the seal, noticing the pleasure the snake Sannin took in the performance. Orochimaru would always be a scientist first and a ninja second. "You mentioned going to Kiri. Is there anything you want to get there?" "I have an old friend I need to see." "Is there anyone I know?" Naruto said with a smirk. "Madara Uchiha." Orochimaru froze and looked up from his seal study as Naruto chuckled. "At least, that's what he calls himself." "I see." Naruto stood up and shook his head, prompting Orochimaru to do the same. "Well, I've wasted enough time and haven't discovered any flaws that could derail my plans, so I guess all that remains is to put them into action." Naruto took the seal and they both walked out of the room, Orochimaru with a contemplative expression on his face and Naruto with excitement and thought. "I'm coming for you, Obito." At Konoha, Kushina opened her eyes for the first time in a long time and noticed she was in a dark room. She then heard a very familiar voice. "Kushina." Looking towards the source, she saw her husband, and the memories of the attack, the Kyuubi, her son came flooding back to her. She staggered for a moment before she felt Minato holding her and saying, "Relax, the danger has passed." She looked at Minato and said after a few moments of controlling her breathing. "What happened, Minato?" "We were dead, and I resurrected you." "What about the Kyuubi? Is he dead?" "Don't worry, it's been taken care of." "How about Naruto? Is he all right?" She noticed Minato recoil and inquired worriedly. "What happened to Naruto?" "Minato, what happened to my son?" "Kushina. A lot has happened, and I have so much to tell you." "Where is my son?" "Minato, where is my baby boy?" "Kushina, you need to relax. Can you please calm down? I need to know what happened to my son." "He left," Jiraiya said as he took a step closer. "He left Konoha with Orochimaru after defecting from Konoha." No. That can't be right. He despises us, Kushina. He let the Kyuubi loose on Konoha and escaped during the chaos, Minato explained. My son despises me? It's my fault, Minato admitted. He despises us for sealing the Kyuubi within him. He claims we are not his family. I should not have done it. I should have found another way. There was no other option, Jiraiya explained. You did what was right. You saved the village. The village that disregarded my last request and treated my son like garbage. What? Exclaimed Kushina. Minato sighed and explained. As I previously stated, there is a lot I need to tell you. The Hokage office. After Kushina had calmed down a little, they went to the Hokage's office, Tsunade being too busy in the hospital to be there. Kushina was stunned by the level of destruction she could see through the windows, and Minato's assurance that her son was to blame didn't help keep her calm. They went inside, and Kushina was informed about the major events that had occurred since her death, including how long it had been, what had occurred on the day of her death, and everything that did not involve Naruto. Tell me about Naruto, she said when they were done explaining. Both Minato and Jiraiya did not respond, and as she was about to demand an answer, the door opened, and Kakashi limped inside, clearly injured and with a confused expression on his face. I have information about Naruto. What happened to you, Kakashi? Kushina inquired. Naruto happened, we fought, and the only reason I'm still alive is because he was fooling around with me. What do you mean you know about Naruto? I was one of his Anbu guards, and I had been watching him since he was a baby. He took a deep breath as she motioned for him to continue. He grew up as an orphan. Wait, wasn't he raised by you? Jiraiya inquired. I couldn't stay in the village because I had my spy network. You deserted him. I couldn't abandon my responsibilities to the village. So you're going to abandon a newborn baby? You're his godfather. Jiraiya just looked down in shame as Kakashi went on. He was raised in an orphanage until he was 6 years old, at which point he entered the academy and moved into his own apartment. You let a 6-year-old live alone. That's the thing, we were worried, and I watched him to make sure he could take care of himself. He never showed any problems, and despite his age, he was perfectly fine alone. My poor baby, mumbled Kushina. He was an excellent student in the academy, his only flaw being that he didn't interact with anyone unless absolutely necessary. Was he isolated? He was, but it never seemed to bother him. What concerns me is that he admitted to communicating with the Kyuubi since he was 6, and no one found out. Wait, what? Kakashi said with a sigh. We thought he only found out about the Kyuubi when he was 12 and made contact soon after, but he admitted to training since he met the Kyuubi when he was 6 years old. Could he have been swayed? It's possible, and it would explain his mental issues. What mental problems? He has displayed a variety of symptoms of mental illness, including mood swings, outbursts of rage, and suicidal ideation. He wanted to kill himself. Screamed Kushina, half sobbing. That's what our psychologist said, but he refused to see them, and we were told not to push him in order to avoid a volatile reaction. Naruto. Whimpered Kushina. Anyway, he graduated, and his issues seemed to become more obvious, though we're not sure if it was because of the missions or because he was forced to spend time with other people. The only people he seemed to willingly spend time with were Sasuke Uchiha and Ino Yamanaka, a girl who had feelings for him, though they had a falling out before he left. Did he talk to anyone else before he left? Well, there was myself, though to say our relationship was strained would be an understatement. He despised me as well, his teammate Sakura, whom he only tolerated and helped because he claimed she would not slow him down, and that Uzumaki girl he met during the exams. Another Uzumaki? Kushina inquired, hoping. Kakashi said with a nod. Her name is Karen, and it appears that he saved her, as she moved in with him for the final months before they left. Kushina remained silent, caught between the agony of what she was learning and the joy that another member of her clan had survived and was with her son. During missions, he proved level-headed, with very few exceptions. He was a model ninja as long as we talked duty. If I tried something personal, he would shut off immediately and just ignore me. He was also ruthless, killing opponents without remorse or hesitation. Honestly, it bothered me how he got used to killing so easily, but he always seemed calmer after those missions, and it's not like some shinobi don't take kill. She tried to find solace in her son's success, but it didn't work. There isn't much else to say. He fought in the invasion, and when he left, he claimed he helped Orochimaru kill the Sandaime, but given his habit of taunting his opponents, there's no way to be sure, and his fight with Itachi was probably a ruse. How? Why? Kushina was taken aback. She had only wanted a family, to feel the warmth she had lost when Uzushio fell, and now she was dead. Her son despised her and was an S-ranked criminal doing Kami knows what, and it was all their fault. Don't worry, Kushina, we'll bring him back and make things right, Minato tried to reassure her. Make this right. This is your fault. I told you to seal it in me and look what happened. My son hates me, how can I make this right? She screamed at him, shocking everyone in the room. Kushina, I had no choice but to assist him in defeating the masked man. Wait, who is this masked man? Jiraiya inquired. We were attacked the day we died by a man wearing an orange mask and wielding a Sharingan. They all noticed Kakashi's wide eyes when he saw this. No way, he grumbled. Kakashi? Minato inquired. How can it be? What's the matter, Kakashi? Naruto said we'd meet in Kiri. Perhaps he's going there. What could he want with Kiri when they're at war? Jiraiya wondered. I'm not sure, he hesitated. Minato noticed this, but before he could correct him, Kushina said. We're leaving. You can't rush there just because, Jiraiya began, but was cut off. We're going. I'm not going to give up my son. Every person in the room nodded, and Minato couldn't help but recall what Naruto had said during their battle in the mindscape. How could that be? After 2 days. Naruto and Karen had arrived in Kiri a few hours earlier and discovered the rebel encampment. They were met with suspicion but were granted an audience with the rebel leader. They were both standing outside her tent while she finished her business and prepared to receive them. You haven't told me why we came here, Karen pointed out. That's because I don't want you directly involved. Your training is going well, but you're nowhere near the level required to fight the same battles I do, Naruto explained. However, there has to be something I can do to help, she lamented. There is, he said with a smile. For the time being, I'd like you to provide medical assistance to the rebels. They appear to be in need, and it'll be good practice for you. So I'll play doctor while you go do whatever you're going to do? She pouted, prompting him to pat her on the back of the head. If everything goes as planned, you won't even have to be in the line of fire, but just in case, I'll increase the combat focus of your training. At this point, a man with light blue hair and an eye patch exited the tent and said, Mei-sama will be there shortly. They nodded and followed the man inside the tent, where they found a large table with a map of the Land of Water and several locations marked, most notably Kiri, as well as several ninjas surrounding it, all clearly on guard and surrounding a woman with vibrant red hair wearing a blue revealing dress. What do we have here? Inquired the woman. Mei Terumi, Naruto replied. He noticed how she stood guard and the ninja around her reached for their weapons. And now you know who I am. I do, and don't worry, I'm not your adversary. I'm afraid you're putting me at a disadvantage, aren't you? This is Karen, and I'm Naruto Uzumaki. And Uzumaki, you say? We haven't seen many of them in Kiri or elsewhere since they were destroyed. You mean in an assault in which your village took part? He noticed their tense expressions and said, Don't worry, I'm not going to pick a fight over the actions of your village during a time of war against people I've never met. I see, is there a reason you wanted to speak with me? In fact, there are two. Oh, please tell me. First, a promise I made, Naruto said as he moved to one of the scrolls in his belt. Everyone became tense as they saw him unseal a sword, but Mei intervened before anyone could interpret it as a threatening gesture. That's Zabuza's sword, Kabikirabocho. How come you have that? She inquired, her voice cold. He died with dignity, and I promised him I'd give this to Kiri. So you murdered him? We met on opposing sides of the battlefield, and despite being hopelessly outmatched, he fought bravely. She exhaled a sigh and said, That he was. Thank you for returning it. Zabuza would be glad he died fighting. He was. I see, she said, smiling slightly. And the other reason? Yagura, he said, and the entire room frowned. How about that monster? Mei snarled. I came for him and the cretin who controls him. Does that mean he's being controlled? He is. Mei paced around for a moment, thinking, before turning to Naruto and asking. And you believe you can take him? You're only a kid. Did you hear about the Kyuubi's second appearance a few days ago? Are you saying it was you? Her response was a quick flash of tailed beast chakra that alerted everyone nearby. What are you doing? Mei inquired, warily. I have my reasons, but suffice it to say that you have nothing to fear from me as long as you don't get in my way. I see. Unfortunately, I don't have the forces to attack the village and draw Yagura out, so I can't assist you. You don't have to, in fact, I came here to help you. Karen here is a good medic nin, she can help your forces. As for Yagura, I can take him alone. I just need you to know that the village won't survive the fight, so if you have any troops nearby, you should probably pull them back. Even with your power for you to take on Yagura and all his forces by yourself is a bit much, don't you think? I can handle it, Naruto said sternly. I just need to keep an eye on him for a few days to make sure whoever is controlling him is here when I spring my trap. Well, it appears that I don't have much to lose here, and even if you fail, Yagura will lose forces. I will not fail. However, this will not be free. What exactly do you want? You looted the Uzumaki scrolls from Uzushio. Mei paused. There was a reason the Uzumaki were so feared. Nobody in Kiri could understand them, so there was no way to know what was inside those scrolls. She weighed Naruto's assistance against the threat he could pose and made her decision. We've struck a deal. Good. I'll send some clones to scout the village and set up my trap. Karen will stay here to help the injured, and I don't think I need to tell you what will happen if she is injured in any way. No, you don't, ow. I'll withdraw the troops if you escort her to the hospital tents and make sure nothing bad happens to her. Karen shot a quick smile at Naruto as she left, and once they were alone, Mei looked over at the map and said, Is this man in charge of Yagura responsible for the bloodline purges? He is. Kiri was complicit in the death of the girl he loved during the war, and this is his retaliation. Is that why? All of those people, civilians and children, killed as a result of this. Would you like to know what's worse? Kiri was just as much a pawn as everyone else. What exactly do you mean? There are dark forces, and the strings they pull control far more than you realize. What are these forces? They'll be dead soon enough. I wish you luck with that. Thank you very much. You know, Mei teased, "It's a shame you're so young. You seem like the kind of man for me." Naruto smiled as he shook his head. "I'm not sure why you think people find you unattractive because of your age. You're not that old, and frankly, you're more attractive than most girls half your age." "Oh, you're such a charmer," she blushed. "I try." After 3 days, Naruto was finally on the move when one of his clones noticed Obito teleporting into the Mizukage's office. He sneaked into the village fairly easily because he had been scouting it out with several clones over the previous few days and was familiar with the patrol routes. He smiled and thought as he got closer and felt Yagura and Obito enter his sensory range. "Are you prepared? Vengeance will be sweet. Just keep in mind that I need Kamui, so no disintegrating his body." Naruto took a deep breath, his senses sharpened, and he could feel the blood rushing through his veins. He was about to move when he noticed a few more signatures entering his range, which bothered him because he recognized a few of them. "I figured Kakashi would bring Namikaze along, but who is the other one? Oh my god, I recognize that one. Who exactly is it? Kushina." Oh, he was taken aback. He didn't think they'd bring her back. He had mixed feelings about the woman. He didn't like her but, unlike Minato, he wasn't sure what he felt. He shook his head. There is no room for error. He concentrated on Obito, the chakra pumping into his muscles and the sound of his heartbeat both deafening and mute as he smirked and let go of the breath he had been holding. It's showtime. He immediately activated the space-time lock, and before Obito could notice, he burst through the window and kicked Yagura through the wall, then moved to punch Obito, who had just realized he couldn't use Kamui and moved to block, only to be sent through the wall by the power of the blow. From his vantage point, he looked down on the two of them as Kiri Nin surrounded them, only sparing a glance at the masked man beside their cage before returning his gaze. "I suggest you tell your men to leave before I crush them the way I'm about to crush you. You must be insane if you thought you could attack me and survive in the middle of my village," Yagura said. "Oh, don't worry," Naruto smirked. "It won't be much longer a village." At the same time, they both began to flash through hand seals, and the Kiri Nin moved to attack Naruto. Crushing wave water style. Stone spikes in earth style. Naruto jumped over Yagura's attack and sped through more and seals as a water wave shot towards him and several spikes rose from the earth and skewered Kiri Nin. Wind bullet wind style. He spit a wind bullet at Yagura, who used his staff's hook to raise a wall of water and cast the jutsu. Water mirror. Water style. The wind bullet struck the mirror and was reflected back at Naruto. Unfortunately for Yagura, he was expecting it and was already in the process of performing another jutsu. Fire style. Fantastic fireball. The wind bullet collided with the fireball and only served to strengthen it. It collided with the mirror and evaporated it, though Yagura escaped in time. Naruto landed across from Yagura and noticed Obito attempting to flee the fight. He didn't have to say anything before a clone formed itself, their eyes blood red, and they dashed towards Obito saying, "No, you do not." Kurama clashed with Obito, and even if they weren't used to taijutsu, they could draw on Naruto's abilities, whereas Obito wasn't used to fighting without the Kamui, so after a quick exchange, Kurama stood beside Naruto while Obito was launched alongside Yagura. "Beware of the eyes," Naruto warned. "I know," Kurama grumbled, though the blonde could tell the fox was ecstatic about the situation. "Who are you?" exclaimed Yagura. "The making of a god," Yagura said with a shake of his head. "It doesn't matter. You're going to die now." Yagura tapped into the Sanbi's power, a red cloak of chakra covering him and 3 tails appearing in his back. He expected Naruto to be intimidated, but he didn't expect Naruto to laugh and say, "This game can be played by 2 people." Naruto donned his own chakra cloak to match Yagura's, 3 tails sprouted from his back, and his grin appeared much more feral than before. "Let's go dancing." They dashed at each other and clashed, the shockwave shattering any windows that their previous attacks hadn't. Yugura tried to slap Naruto away with his tails, but Naruto easily dodged and grabbed them, threw Yugura in the air, and howled. This launched Yugura even further, and before he could recover, Naruto was already on him, clawing at Yugura, who dodged and punched Naruto away, followed by an air blast of his own, which Naruto blocked but was met with another punch by Yugura. He dodged the next attack and headbutted Yugura, then tacked the Mizukage to the ground and began slamming his head into the rocks. Yugura managed to break free by kicking Naruto away, then ripped pieces of the ground off and threw them at Naruto, who had to dodge all but the last one. He threw it back at Yugura, who blasted it apart with a howl, only to be punched in the jaw by Naruto. He flew into a building, which collapsed on top of him. Naruto jumped high into the air and shot a barrage of air blasts at the building until it was completely leveled. Yugura jumped out, clearly injured, from the rubble. I had no idea the Mizukage was this frail. Yugura growled and dashed towards Naruto, who avoided the claw attack by punching him in the gut before kicking him away. "You know what would be pretty fucking useful for you right now?" Naruto smirked. Yugura didn't rush in again, preferring to wait for an opening. "A lineage. I'm not one of those freaks, and I'm not in need of their cursed power." "Of course not, because you are not going to be easily defeated by me." Yugura slammed his clawed hands onto the ground, causing a massive wave of water to burst forth and rush towards Naruto. The blonde countered by spitting his own wave of water, and the two waves collided, forming a large lake in the ruins of the village they fought to build. "I got you now," Yugura smirked as the lake began to shake and the waves began to rise. "No, I got you," Naruto said as he sent a large amount of lightning chakra through the water, surprising Yugura and interfering with his jutsu. Yugura, who was bleeding and panting, glared at Naruto and yelled, "Die." He began to gather chakra in his mouth for a tailed beast bomb, while Naruto smirked and did the same. Soon, both attacks were ready, and the Jinchuriki glared at each other before firing them. The two-tailed beast bombs collided in the middle of the lake, causing massive waves to erupt. They stood equal to each other for a brief moment before exploding and covering the area in a cloud of smoke. Yugura emerged from his tailed beast cloak, believing he had won until the cloud dispersed, revealing Naruto unharmed and smirking. "Not good enough, fishboy," mocked Naruto. Before they could continue fighting, Kurama flew through a building and crashed into the water alongside Naruto.
"Are you all right, furball?" "Fantastic," Kurama remarked sarcastically as Obito exited the same building and approached Yugura.
When a third party appeared in the lake at that moment, Naruto sighed and mumbled, "I wanted to look after Yugura before they arrived, but it appears I got carried away." He recognized Kakashi and Minato right away, but it was when he locked his blue eyes with the woman's violet eyes that he came to a halt. He felt something in his heart but couldn't pinpoint what it was, so he ignored it and smiled confidently. "Is that you, Naruto?" Kushina asked. "How could you?" they asked. "That jutsu is vile," they said, "and your hypocrisy knows no bounds, Hitaki." Minato scanned the area and immediately recognized the masked man who had attacked his son's birth site and precipitated this entire situation. "Madara Uchiha," he growled. "Madara? Do you think this moron is Madara?" Naruto couldn't stop laughing. "Look at me, Naruto," Kushina demanded, but he ignored her and continued to laugh. "Believe me, if this idiot were the real Madara, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He would have easily killed you and destroyed your village on his own." "Is it true?" Kakashi inquired. "Is what you told me true?" "What are you talking about, Kakashi? What did he say?" Minato inquired. No, this isn't Madara. This is just a lonely little boy refusing to accept the reality that the girl he loved, the girl who didn't even love him back, died at the hands of his so-called best friend, Naruto mocked, turning to the masked man and saying. Isn't that correct, Obito? It can't be. Minato exclaimed, while Kakashi simply resembled the masked man in regret. Obito scowled as he removed his mask and glared angrily at Naruto. I'm going to kill you because of this. But why? This is just a reunion, you, me, the Kyuubi, Namikaze over there, he even brought the traitor to her own family, it's only fair that they be here for your death. Obito. Why? Kakashi wondered. You murdered her, I told you to protect Rin, and you murdered her, Obito yelled at Kakashi. Please obituary it. It wasn't like that. Ignore Hitachi's attempts. He has all his pitiful apologies but refuses to accept responsibility for his actions, Naruto said, cutting him off. I know, Obito said, his gaze fixed on the silver-haired man. Please, Naruto, Kushina tried to speak but froze when Naruto spat at her. I don't know what to say to monsters like you. Kushina took a step back, stunned by the blonde's sheer rage, she sobbed and collapsed to her knees. Minato moved to help her as Naruto turned to Obito and said. Your story is heartbreaking, but I'm afraid I don't give a damn. I'll be taking your Sharingan as well as your life. I'd like to see you try, Obito said, spinning his Sharingan furiously as Yagura transformed into his tailed beast mode, eventually becoming the Three Tails, Isobu. Let's work together, Kurama, Naruto said. Let's do it, Kurama said as they vanished in a puff of smoke. As the sensation of KCM washed over him, he was covered in golden chakra that resembled majestic flickering flames, 2 golden ethereal horns rose above his head, and 6 black magatama appeared in the collar of the golden chakra Haori formed around him, various black lines spread all over his body and converged in a spiral over his stomach. He grinned viciously at Obito, his eyes slitting and the whisker marks on his cheeks thickening, and said. You're all mine. Obito could only keep up with Naruto's speed because of his Sharingan, but that didn't mean he could defend himself against it. He was hit with a kick that sent him through several buildings and through the village wall. Naruto turned to face the now transformed Yagura and, with a single punch, launched the Biju into the air, sped through the hand seal at breakneck speed, and shouted. Vacuum bomb in Inferno style. The white-hot ball of flames was much larger and faster than any other, and it hit Isobu dead on, creating a temporary miniature sun in the sky as the Biju howled in pain. Naruto was on top of it a second later, and kicked it with enough force to shoot it towards the ground, creating a crater that took up nearly a quarter of the village. As he fell, he noticed Minato approaching him with a Rasengan in hand, only to be met with a mini-tailed beast bomb. The two techniques clashed but Naruto's technique was much more powerful and he wasn't holding back, it easily powered through Minato's technique and punched a hole into the undead Hokage's stomach before they both hit the ground and Minato jumped away. Naruto jumped back to avoid the ground's wood spikes and blocked one of Obito's punches, the sheer life energy Naruto was emitting causing wood to appear from Obito's artificial arm. Obito sped through hand seals before shouting as the blonde shoved him back. Deep forest emergence. Wood style. That's more like it, Naruto grinned as he sped through hand seals and yelled. Majestic destroyer flame in Inferno style. The white-hot wave of flames struck the growing trees, igniting them but failing to burn through them. Impressive, said Naruto. Shut up. Yelled Obito. What's the matter? Are you upset because I made fun of your dead girlfriend? I'm going to fuck you. I certainly hope you try. The legendary Madara Uchiha cannot be defeated by a 12-year-old. Naruto laughed and went on. I still can't believe that blonde idiot thought you were Madara, I mean really? I should have killed you when you were a baby. You should've, but you didn't, and now it's coming back to bite you in the $1. Funny how that works, huh? Obito cancelled his jutsu and fired a few wood spikes at Naruto, who dodged and rushed Obito again, and they engaged in a furious taijutsu exchange, Obito incorporating his wood release into his blows to try and gain some space, while Naruto simply kept the attacks coming, aiming to overwhelm the slower opponent. Obito got a break when Kakashi appeared from behind the blonde with a rakery, forcing Naruto to jump away to avoid being hit. Minato took advantage of this opportunity to rush him and try to seal him so they could track Naruto, but the blonde saw this coming and used his vastly superior speed to keep Minato away while he bombarded him with fire jutsu. When chakra chains appeared around Naruto and held him still, suppressing his tailed beast chakra, he growled and used brute strength to force the chains apart before jumping and speeding through hand seals. Thunderclap storm style. He fired a purple thunderbolt at Kushina, forcing her to retract her chains and dodge. He noted that his attack caused her more pain than the attack itself. He landed on the ground and blocked a tail swipe from Isobu, then used all of his strength to lift the tailed beast and spin it around, batting away Kushina who tried to approach. He jumped and threw the tailed beast in the ground. He didn't waste the opportunity as he manifested Kurama's golden ethereal head around him and charged a tailed beast bomb. He fell right over Isobu and shot at point. When the dust settled where Kirigakure once stood, only a few buildings on the outskirts remained, everything else having been vaporized. Yagura stood in the center, barely alive. Naruto landed next to him and manifested Kurama's head again, this time much larger to keep the others at bay. He knelt next to Yagura and said, "You'll live, at least for a little while, and then Isobu will be mine." "You're not going to succeed," Yagura snarled. "That's the thing, you lost the moment I was born. Whether I succeed or fail, you get an uncaring god or an evil one, and I made certain that the only person who could possibly stop me was loyal to me." Naruto placed his hand on Yagura's chest and used Kurama's chakra to heal his most critical injuries. He then opened a large scroll and sealed Yagura inside it. Standing up, he saw the others outside the barrier, Obito clearly wary but not directly fighting them. At least they aren't stupid enough to fight each other in the presence of a clearly superior enemy. Naruto abruptly dropped the manifestation and dashed towards Obito, grabbing him by the neck and slamming him into the ground. Obito retaliated with a wood spike, and Naruto jumped away. "Is it time to see Rin again, Obito? I'm not going down without a fight. The infinite Tsukuyomi can't be stopped. The funny thing is, I don't disagree with you. A perfect world sounds pretty good to me.
Who cares if it isn't real?
I'm not even sure if this is real." "How come?" "Because I don't care about world peace or the greater good, my goals aren't noble. I'm in this for power, and the Jubi will be mine."
Obito glared at Naruto before sprinting through hand seals and shouting,
Wood style. Naivety in a tree world. Naruto smirked before countering with his own attack, in which he created several clones, all of whom were in Kurama chakra mode and all of whom shouted, Majestic Destroyer Flame in Inferno style. Obito smirked and said as the sea of flames completely overwhelmed Obito's jutsu and incinerated all the trees to ash. Naruto took advantage of the opportunity to dash towards Obito and ram his Chidori straight through Obito's chest. "You're a moron." He then tried to stab Naruto with a wood spike protruding from his arm, but Naruto blocked the attack with his chakra arm and said,
"You're the only idiot in here, Obito."
Naruto's Chidori sent a stream of electricity through Obito's body and directly through his brain, instantly killing him. Obito's corpse slumped over Naruto, and he saw the horror on the others' faces, especially Kakashi's. Naruto took his hand off Obito's chest and slumped him over his shoulder, glaring at the others one last time before speeding away.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.